Hello and welcome to Let's Talk. This is a quarterly webinar series hosted by Anti-Trafficking International, or ATI. This series is designed to help engage and educate people in human trafficking and how to prevent it from happening in all of our communities. I'm the series moderator, Christine Groh, and I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Stephanie Street as our speaker on tonight's topic, Back to School Basics, Childproofing Our Communities from Human Trafficking. Dr. Street is a social worker in schools with over 20 years of experience in the public school system in Virginia. She has also worked in the Fairfax County Juvenile Court as a probation counselor in a residential setting. Dr. Street earned her doctoral degree from Walden University in social work with a specialization in disaster, crisis, and intervention. Her research was related to domestic minor sex trafficking and social work. Dr. Street is a contributing faculty member in the Bachelor of Social Work and Master of Social Work programs at Walden University, and she currently advocates for multiple families in various districts across Northern Virginia. Dr. Street has a passion for working to eradicate human trafficking through prevention and intervention strategies, and she is taking that passion to a national platform. Just a few weeks ago, Dr. Street competed in the Virginia Classic Woman American Beauties Plus 2022 pageant. Her platform, raising awareness about domestic minor sex trafficking. I'm honored to say that she won the crown, and now she will go on to compete in the nationals competition April 6th through 9th, 2022 in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Street, we offer you our deepest congratulations, and we're excited to see you represent this very worthy cause on the national stage. This evening, Dr. Street will start with some of her thoughts on what our children are experiencing and how we can keep them safe. Then we'll go into our Q&A session. Please submit any questions you have in the chat. We will try to get to as many as we can. Dr. Street, over to you.
Thank you. Talking about a certain age or a certain gender, there is no discrimination at all. It doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It can affect and will affect anyone. Next slide. Let's see. So I wanted to give a little bit of information about kids that traffickers target. They usually target kids that lack a sense of belonging, don't really feel like they fit in with their families, don't have very many friends at school, more of considered what we consider loners. Kids that don't feel well respected or valued by their family or friends, base their self-worth on popularity in relationships. And that can be really dangerous because kids will up the ante, continue to up the ante if they do not feel like they're getting the popularity they want or the respect that they want in a relationship or someone's attention. And their risk level may also go higher. They may become more risky as time moves on. So that's something that we definitely want to think about when we think about the children. Individuals that are willing to keep secrets, including their relationships, don't have a good relationship with their parents. And I'm going to speak tonight a lot about relationships because that can be a key point to saving our children. So I will talk some more about that later on. Are looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend. A lot of kids don't know what healthy relationships are. They're teenagers. They're more hormonal than they are realistic about what's healthy and unhealthy. Kids are often bored and don't have much to do, spend a lot of time away from their family and friends, so they aren't building that bond and working on that self-worth and feeling valued by their family. If they're not there, they're not going to get that. Are willing to take directions and believe the lies and false promises of the trafficker. Next slide. relationships. A lot of things that I try to educate parents about is spend a lot of time with your children, as much as you can. And with that time, that's to do things that are interesting to them and to you. You have to show interest in the things that they're interested in as well, not just yourself or things that you want to do or things that you have to do. Taking an interest in their lives, know their friends, where they're spending their time, getting to know their friends' parents. Make sure you exchange numbers or emails and stay in contact. Let their friends' parents become your friends. They don't have to be your best friends, but still be your friend. So that way you'll know the environment that your child is over visiting or sleeping over. I also encourage parents that have the means and have the time and that are home to try to make your home the home that your children's friends come to, because you have more control that way. Who's coming in and out of the house, how much supervision is there. You don't have control of someone else's home and their environment. And that's another reason why you become friends with them, so you have opportunity to learn about the environment of where your child is going. Make sure they have structured time, continuously work on building their self-esteem, and educate yourself and the children about trafficking. Building self-esteem is a big one also. You want them to feel good about themselves, feel worthy, and have high expectations of the individuals that they come in contact with, their friends. They expect certain things from their friends and really have goals. So that's important as well. Next slide, please. All right, there are life changes that have happened since the pandemic. I can't think of one person that I know that was not affected by the pandemic. When students were in school virtually, they lost social interaction, that structure and that routine. That structure and routine is important for everyone, but I also don't want to leave out our students with disabilities when we think about how that really affects them and the trickle effect of how it affects their family as well. Some parents or guardians work from home and some did not. For some kids, it was hard to be home all day and not have parents there because they are frontline workers or they still had to go to work. Or for some kids, it was a struggle because their parents were home all day. And so they may have isolated themselves in their room to get a break and put some distance between them. So, it wasn't always a good thing during this time. But I will say for some families, it was great for them because they needed that time to work on communication with one another, to learn more about each other because they spend so much time on the go, away, living everyday life, work, school, activities, and other things. But for some families, it was great, but not all. Achievement gaps are likely to widen. Not every student is capable of being a virtual student. And especially for those that were already behind in school, have some deficits, because of the pandemic and being virtual, a lot of those gaps have widened. So the school system, now that majority of schools are back in full time, that they are understanding that they have to do some remediation, and some are moving forward. Again, this affected everyone differently and affected every student differently. And we definitely have to take that individual approach when those students came back. And it's not just the students, it's also the faculty and the staff, because a lot of them were impacted as well. And a lot of them didn't have the training to be virtual teachers, and they kind of just jumped in there and learned quickly. And there were also emotional and mental health changes during the pandemics. Students that received services at schools, such as individual counseling or in various programs or groups or in the community, all of that came to a screeching halt. And when it came to a halt, it really affected the individuals, especially if they've had the services for a long time, or even if their counseling services had to go to being virtual. They weren't feeling that there are some things you can get in person that you really can't get virtually. It's hard to read body language virtually. So also lower income families, there were public health crises, social isolation, and economic recession. All of those can play a part on someone's emotional and their mental health. Next slide, please. All right. A lot of things that parents should assess with their children regularly, not just because we had a pandemic, but just regularly. Parents, guardians, I call you the experts on your children. You are the expert. So you know when something is different within your child. You know when something is off, a behavior that's not normal, when they've lost interest in learning, maybe before the pandemic or during sometime in school. If they are not interested anymore and they were interested before, that's a change. And, parents trying to figure out why that change came about is what you need to get to. So as soon as you notice it, that's when you should jump on it. They're spending more time on technology. Okay, we know they're spending more time on technology because school was virtual. But outside of that, outside of academics, we're talking about personal social time. Are they spending more time on their phone? Are they playing games? Are they using, communicating through gaming systems? There are a lot of things on the computer, tablets. It's just so many platforms for technology that has the potential to for predators to interact with our children. And we need to be aware of that, which leads us to them being more secretive. If your child is playing, oh, who are you playing? And, it's nice to sometimes walk in or walk past and just kind of do a little check-in and see what's going on. But if you find that they're becoming more secretive, bring it to attention and let them know that you've noticed a change and you want to help. Not wanting to spend time with family. They cannot feel worthy or loved or appreciated, respected from the family if they're not spending time with the family. If they seem agitated or angry more than normal, of course, all teenagers are moody and always angry about something, but out of the ordinary for your child, are they agitated or angry? Sexualized behaviors, they may all of a sudden become more sexualized in the way they dress or the way they communicate. If you hear them talking on the phone with their friends, what is it about? And physical abuse. Always look at your child and see if anything different. Look for red flags, such as in the summertime, why are you wearing a hoodie in the summertime? Why do you have long sleeves on? Just being aware of that your child is healthy physically as well. And when it comes to the school contacts and you have questions or support for your child, You can easily reach out to your child's administrator, the school resource officer, or the school safety officer, school counselor, school social worker, school psychologist. And if they're a special education student, also reach out to their case manager, because their case manager will have a lot of interaction with your child. One of the things that I try to really encourage parents is not to go to teachers about an overall concern you have, especially if it's emotional or mental health problem. That's a lot of pressure to put on a teacher that may not have the training to deal with that. Yes, I like to hope that every teacher would, if that happens, would say, let me put you in touch with the appropriate person. But just to not even put them in that position, because it can be very uncomfortable for them. And I'm very big on confidentiality. So it just allows opportunity for more information to get out there. And the closer we keep it to the vest and deal directly with the individuals that can be of assistance, and be open with those individuals, that would be great. I mean, teachers, they're wonderful. They're well-versed in various areas, but I just would not like to put a teacher in that position. Next slide, please. And I just want to make sure that I was able to show the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So if you suspect trafficking, this hotline, they do a lot of things. You can report a tip, identify services in your area, get general information and resources as well. So that's a number that I just want to make sure that you had it and had opportunity to see it. And even I encourage parents, sometimes I'm like, if you're not sure, doesn't matter. Just call and talk to someone. All right. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Street. A lot of really great information in those couple of slides. Even just in 20 minutes, there was a lot to learn there. We're going to spend the rest of the webinar digging into some of these issues a little bit deeper. I just want to remind our audience that if you do have questions for Dr. Street, please do put them in the chat and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. So Dr. Street, the one place I'd like to start is with the beginning of a new school year. You had talked a little bit about how parents and families and children went through the pandemic and how it affected just about everybody. Now that kids are going back to school, a lot of them have been back to school for a few weeks now. What are you noticing? How are the kids doing and how do they seem to be dealing with the in-person presence or hybrid presence for some of them?
Like I said, every student, we have to look at them individually. We can't group them all, of course. One of the things that I would say is I've seen a lot more anxiety in the kids, whether it's fears of things just being different coming back to school now other than wearing a mask, things being different socially. Are their friends still the same when they come back? Just trying to get in the groove of a regular school year. There's nothing regular now. Stuff is always changing. And that's another thing. They have to be flexible because things are always changes. Numbers are going up, may cause us to have more restrictions, more things that we might do. We have to take other things into consideration, such as social distancing. So like an example would be, normally majority of the schools have pep rallies in the gym. And now they have to think of other creative ways to have pep rallies, like having them outside. So it does take a lot of change, and there are a lot of kids out there that don't do well with transitions, don't do well with changes. And we have to be mindful of that. Our admin team, our staff, teachers, everyone has to understand that we need as many eyes on the children as we can get. And we need to be ready to notice when we see something that is not familiar with the kids, especially the ones that we already know. There are kids that come back that behave differently from when they were there before. You know, they might have been real chatty before, real outgoing, socializing, and they come back now and people are saying, well, how come they're not talking? Or they want to sit in the back or anything like that. So some of those changes are the things that we're seeing right now. Let's see, that I think their social skills have taken a hit. How they communicate is, I think we're given refreshers on appropriate social skills, because some kids have really lost their ability to interact appropriately. So I think that as well. And some kids are really having a hard time just trying to fit in and trying to find their groove, where they fit in at, and things are different. They're different for some kids.
Yeah, and you talk about resilience. I think we've all been struggling with, how far does resilience stretch? Even, a lot of adults I know are trying to learn how to people again. I almost talk about it. How do I be around all of these different people in this new way? You talked also too about, work is also different for parents, and the home environment is different because we're still in this kind of in-between times where some parents do have to go physically into a place to work and some can't yet go physically into a place to work. Are you seeing any kind of difference in students at this time about the number of them that may have a parent or someone at home, or whether, more kids are going home to, without a parent who's there who can greet them when they come in the door from school? Is there kind of any change from previous years?
There are, I think, an increase in more family issues, whether it's new or existing mental health issues or substance abuse within the home. A lot of parents lost jobs. So we have those with financial strains, those that are in jeopardy of losing their housing or have lost their housing during this time. So, some of them had assistance from the government, which was great for some of it, but it just wasn't enough. A lot of the school districts, I think, did a really good job with assisting with meals and access to the internet. And I think they did a really, really good job with that. But we also have to remember that not every family has the means to do what's required for virtual learning. So that's when it's up to the school to communicate with these individuals. If they're not reaching out to you, but you notice virtually they not participating, that's when we have to, get in there and find out and try to make contact and see what it is we can do. Because a lot of times we have resources that parents aren't aware of for whatever reason. I'm not putting the blame on anyone, but just resources they're not aware of, that if they just communicate with someone at the school, we can connect them to the appropriate place if we have the resource. You're muted.
Sorry. One of the questions just came in through the chat, and going back to how you talked about paying attention to what children are wearing, and if they're wearing, a lot of layers or long sleeve shirts when the weather is warmer. One of our audience members knows there's been a trend with kids wearing oversized clothes, hoodies, and sweatshirts. As a parent, should parents be concerned when their kids are wearing hoodies all the time, even when it's hot? And what questions can they ask the kids in these times?
Well, one thing I would say is is that something new for them? That's a big thing. Is it something new for them, or is it they do it only when they're going out, or are they walking around the house in the big clothes and the hoodie and everything else? And if so, have an individual conversation. It may not need to be a family conversation. I think that's important too, because sometimes even privacy within the home is important. So, maybe a mother wants to sit with their child and say, you know what? I know you have to be hot in that hoodie in the summertime. Why are you so comfortable with that hoodie on? Is it something to do with their body? Is it emotional? Are they covering up marks? Are they self-harming? I mean, there's so many things it could be. It could be they just don't feel well about their body. Regardless of what their explanation is, it's worth having the conversation.
That's great advice. We have a couple of other questions from the audience, which are kind of going along this same theme, which is, kids change as they get older, right? Especially if they're, becoming a preteen or going through their teenage years. How can you as a parent kind of distinguish between normal change within a child as they go through different phases, or something that could be a real risk that something's wrong, or there's could be some grooming or trafficking that could start to happen here? How do you start to kind of parse that out and understand and try to, understand where the lines are there for your child?
One thing, like I said, the parent is the expert on your child. Of course, there are certain changes that we expect to see, a little bit of moodiness and some other things. But when you start seeing extreme changes, that's when you need to be concerned. Or instead of them being an occasional moodiness, occasional angry, it's all the time. Okay. All the time is not a regular teenage behavior. There's usually something underlying if they're angry all the time. And with that usually comes other behaviors. So watching out for all of that and trying to get to the root of what that is, whether it means speaking with their school counselor to see if they can be of assistance, or speaking with them individually at home. Maybe a parent just showing that they care and they're interested in why, and children want to be heard. Teenager, adult, all individuals really want to be heard. So giving them opportunity to express themselves and not be judged, and let them know that you want to help. I think that's going to go a long way with that. And another thing is being consistent with it. If they say, well, I would feel more comfortable not having a hoodie on if I could have a long sleeve shirt. So maybe we start shedding the hoodie and we're going to something else that makes them comfortable, and they work on it. If it's your body, well, let's work out, let's do this. So you have to listen to them and figure out what it is that has them in that mental state at that moment. And it may be hard to get out of them, just because they're embarrassed or they just don't want to tell you because they're a teenager. But don't give up. Yeah. That's one thing I can say. Just be consistent. It's not going to work when you do a conversation here, 4 or 6 months later, a conversation here. You have to be consistent. And I don't mean like every night. I just mean just show a consistency in being interested in their life and what is going on.
One of the things that we talk about when it comes to building kids' self-esteem, or, keeping them out of a troublesome environment, or, at risk for people who might want to take advantage of them, is after-school activities and things that happen outside of the classroom, outside of the normal school days. Are you seeing that those programs are more available or less available now during COVID? And are kids more likely or less likely to get involved because of COVID?
Again, it's the individual student, but a lot of those programs are starting to come back. And again, we have to follow the changes that are going, the regulations as they change. We have to adjust with those. But I think keeping them in as many activities as you can and as they're willing to participate in is good, because we want as much structured time for them as possible. And in that structured time, the family or a parent or a guardian being a part of some of that structure. Not just, okay, go here with your friends, okay, go play on this team, go play on this travel team, and not be a part of something that interests them. Again, right back to that, because that's going to help with that relationship.
Great. And then shifting back to the classroom really quickly, we know, and we've heard, various reports, and I think you even mentioned that kids could be having, experiencing lower grades right now because we had a year where school was weird, right? And it was just very uncomfortable. And some kids may be a little bit behind where they normally would be. What would you say, is kind of a normal sort of a grade drop or a little bit of a slip? And where do you think parents should start getting really worried? Does it go back to, the parent being the expert, or would you counsel the parent to just be maybe a little more patient in the first couple of months of back to school?
I would definitely encourage them to be patient, because they are still adjusting to getting back to being in the classroom. They're getting adjusted to new teachers. They're getting adjusted to new rules and regulations of how things are going, getting back in the groove of doing things. It's a lot more demanding being at school all that time than being virtual. They may have gotten in a certain rhythm with virtual, whether they were successful at it or not successful. They had gotten in a certain routine, and we have to break those, and that takes time. One thing that I would definitely say to parents is, some slip, I usually say a letter grade, expect something for a lot of students, but I will give it to the teachers and administrators. They have done an incredible job being creative, providing accommodations and resources to help children to try and close that gap. So I definitely encourage them to be patient and have that open communication with the teachers of the classes that they're struggling in. Let's find out if the struggle is something, them just trying to get back into it, or is it a learning disability that hasn't been identified and now we're really seeing it? Is it an impact in the educational setting because of mental health from COVID? I mean, it could be so many things. Is it something that's going on? Are they being groomed? Or, so it's just so many things that could be happening to be the reason for the grade drop. So again, parents, you're investigators. You're a partner. Your teachers are partners with you to try to figure it out. Student is not capable of identifying their needs immediately and figuring out a solution. If so, they wouldn't need parents as long as they do.
Right. One of the other questions from the chat from our audience goes back to the teachers. You had noted that the best way for a parent to engage if they have problems is to go to the school counselor or social worker or the administration. But teachers often will see something could be wrong or see some red flags before someone at home might. If a teacher sees changes in students that are really worrisome, where they're seeing multiple of these red flags in a student, would you say they should go to the parents or to an administrator? What advice would you have for a teacher?
For a teacher, and it also depends on the teacher's knowledge of the situation. There are some teachers that, something just isn't right, and I'm seeing something and I just need some help, identifying, because if it's what I think it is, they're going to need some help. And usually if it's a situation like that where they're not really sure, I would say go to the administrator first. Have another set of eyes in there. Let someone help you out and identify what needs to be done. I would definitely say, I tell any teacher, if you have a concern about a student, reach out to a parent. I've never had a parent get upset because I called them because I had a concern about their child. You know, it might have been something that was just ironed out. You know, I don't understand why your child's sleeping all the time. Oh, I should have called you guys. She started a new medication. You know, so calling home to let them know you're concerned and see if a parent can help, and are they seeing the same thing at home? So that communication piece is huge. So I always encourage any teacher, if you're concerned about any student or see a drastic change or something that you're just not sure about, contact a parent as well.
That's really great advice. Thank you. What kinds of conversations would you recommend parents have with their kids as they get back into the swing of school? You talked about how important it is to keep the lines of communication open. Any advice on how to get those conversations started in ways that kids will be more likely to engage?
Um, I always say, talk about stuff that's not important, really, you know, and you can, if you have the skill to be funny with it, then do that. You know, why'd you wear those pants today? You know, or something. It could be something so small. Just be consistent, but it could be something so small. But also, you have to be able to have those difficult conversations. Some parents just are not comfortable and don't know how to have those difficult conversations. And that can be really hard. And I have parents that reach out and say, okay, I need to talk to my kid about this, but I don't know how to approach it without them flying off the handle. You know, so we do different things to help with that. I've had parent and child in the office and we all talked about it. Or start slow, you know, talk about something more general and then get more and more specific about it and talk with them that way. But just always try to have some kind of conversation with them. What are you watching on TV? Or how was school today? What was happening at school? What happened with that math test we were studying for? You never told me. You know, just anything.
And it sounds like when it comes to the harder conversations, the school social workers and other support that you talked about, that you can kind of call them and bounce some ideas around. That's a really great resource I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah.
That's great. Parents are starting to participate in back to school sessions with teachers as, they start to, understand what the curriculum is and all of that. Are there questions that you suggest that parents bring up during back to school nights and back to school sessions?
What is your policy on cell phones in your classroom?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's not the same for all teachers. So you would want to know that, especially as many times as students are always on their phone. And again, you don't know if grooming's going on or recruiting's going on while they're on the phone. So that's a good question to ask. I would also say, ask if there's any websites that are blocked at school, or does your school even block certain websites? Because you want to know what access your kids are going to have being in the building. Let's see. How does my child socialize or participate in your class? Do they sit off to the side by themselves? Are they really engaged? Are they trying to be the center of attention? Just ask them how they socialize. You don't have to say, well, I want to know if, she has a boyfriend in the class or a girlfriend in the class. No, not that. Just how they participate and how they socialize. Are they engaging with the teacher? Are they participating academically? Are they saying anything? So always encourage teachers to try to talk to the students. Even trying to pull those that are in their shell, try to pull them out a little bit at a time. Um, and ask the teachers, do you have any concerns about my child? Do you see anything that, don't always depend on them to let you know when they have a concern. So ask them.
You raised a question about the use of social media in schools and what sites might be blocked. Do you have suggestions or recommendations for parents about what their own social media policies should be at home and how to keep, some of the more dangerous content off of their children's systems in the home environment?
Yep. I always encourage, especially my families that have younger kids, how you start them out and regulate it and keep it going is how it's going to be much easier later when they're a teenager. So that when I say that, I mean finding out how you can limit their internet access and what they can do, and having passwords and knowing what social media your child has, and explaining to them when before they get social media. Make sure you let them know, well, before you have social media, you need to let me know. And then explain to them the possible things that they would see, how to interact, how to handle things. If they're not sure, if they have questions about it, how they're able to come to you. And if you have those passwords and understand what it takes for them to keep that, that's going to help as they get older. Okay, you're 12. Maybe you think I don't need the password to your phone anymore. I've had a password to your phone since you were 7, since you got a phone. Nothing's changed. It's the same, that consistency. It's the same thing over and over again. As far as if you already have a teenager and you don't have access to their passwords, you have to limit that internet at home, that Wi-Fi, and if there's a way that you can go in and see like what sites they're visiting, if they're sharing a computer, looking at their history, those type of things. You have to be a private investigator, this stuff, and we can never keep up with technology. We have parents sometimes that call our IT people and say, how do I do this? Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. I tell parents, call. I'm not real techie, but I can probably connect you to somebody who can help you.
You actually anticipated a question from our audience, which is, are there resources that can teach parents about parental controls of devices? So school IT departments might be another place to go.
Right.
Really great. Really great.
And I think it's good if school systems have trainings for parents. Maybe, like when they have back to school night, or they break up into sessions teaching parents various things. I think it's always great to do something like that. One district that I worked for, we did a resource night. And what that was is we had a lot of donations of clothes. And in one room, we had clothes organized by size and gender and bags, and individuals can go in there and just pick up whatever they need. And also with that, we had vendors. So the vendors were various resources in the community, and they paid like a vendor fee to set up there. And the families were able to speak directly to those resources and get information, make contacts and everything. So, and with the money that we got from the vendors, we were able to do some door gifts for the parents. It might have been like a giant gift card or something like that, just to help. A huge thing is, I think a lot of schools really have to get creative about bringing families into the school. And if you bring a family into the school, they'll work on those relationships and the trust with schools, which will be great for the communication for everyone, for the teachers, for the kid, for the parents. and that'd be really great. But we also have to keep in mind that in order for a school to be really effective like that, you have to know the demographics of your community and identify the needs of the community in order to meet them.
Yeah, that's really important. Related to some of those resources, are there any resources that you would recommend to help parents have that conversation with their kids about what it means to have privacy within the home, and where a child's right to privacy sort of has its limitations, especially when it comes to parents?
Definitely continue to look at various agencies that provide information like these webinars, like ATI does. Just gather as much information as you possibly can. Like a lot of school systems have a resource guide. So there are some resources in there. Some schools offer parenting nights where, they may pick a topic and just educate on that one topic, provide information, provide resources, educate parents. Kind of like when they do the meeting for financial aid for college students, some of the same things, but find out what your parents want to know and what they want to talk about, and then provide that resource for them. Invite community agencies to come in and speak. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone in the school system to be an expert on it or provide the resource. We link with community resources.
That's a really good point. Are there particular social media sites that you worry about with our children?
I worry about all of them. I do, because kids are so quick to put everything on their social media, and predators are looking for that. They're looking for those vulnerable kids. I worry about everything with the social media. I really do. Social media could be good in some cases and bad in some cases, but I think we need to arm our kids with knowledge to protect themselves. I love how they have curriculums now in the school system to teach children about trafficking. And so they know what to look for. And that reduces the risk of them becoming a victim.
Yeah, I will say ATI does a lot of focus on that, and they do a lot of programs within the schools for parents and teachers, and we also have very strong student networks. So we absolutely agree. The more you talk about it, the better, the more protected our children are and our communities are. So
yeah, because businesses need to be educated about it, because if something happens in their place of business, what are they looking for? Parents need to know, kids need to know. So if everybody's watching out for these things, and I always say, if we invest a majority of our energy, time, and money in prevention, we'll have to use less intervention.
absolutely. Farquhar County is really fortunate to have an expert like you working with the parents, the teachers, and their children. Is your sort of role sort of an unusual one, or do you find that more and more schools have an expert like you who can work with parents and teachers and children through some of these really tough issues?
Social workers, there's social workers in, all the school districts. How many social workers they have is a different story. Usually there's social workers have multiple schools, which can be difficult at times. In a perfect world, it'd be great if every middle and high school had a social worker designated to their building. And the reason that I say that is because they learn the environment and the climate of that building. They get to know the staff members, the teachers, the students, and exactly what the needs are. I think they could be more service being in that one building, assisting the parents more, assisting the teachers more, the admin more, the school psychologists and the school social workers, because there are so many teams that we work together on to help students and parents. And makes it difficult sometimes when you have multiple buildings and things happen with your clients. But I noticed that a lot of school systems now are increasing their number of social workers, and I think that's fabulous. Social workers, school psychologists, and some are even hiring mental health specialists. And there's a few districts out there that actually have someone that deals only with human trafficking.
Wow. Do those experts also work with police and first responders in their communities?
Mm-hmm. They do. And also, sometimes there are seats, they hold a seat. Like I used to hold a seat on a task force, human trafficking task force. And I worked for the school. So we had a representative from various agencies that sat on this committee that were, again, we work as a team and try to figure out how we can assist and help. And the confidentiality, again, if we have a victim that is going to come into the school, we need to know certain things. They're not going to walk home, or if they do ride the bus, the bus driver has to kind of be looking out, be able to tell us what's going on. And, we can set up a safety plan for the child. So all those kind of things is what we do. And I hope that I would like to see more. But again, you need to learn your community to find out what's needed for that community. And it gets to me every time somebody says, oh, we don't have any trafficking in our community.
Right.
And the first thing that I think of is you're not identifying them properly.
Right.
Because it is hard to identify, because, some people might identify them as just having depression or other things that, there's substance abuse, and not looking at the core of what has brought this about. So we really have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, we just really have to have our eyes open and look at that.
So for schools like that, where they seem to be in a place where they think, this is not a problem here, we don't have trafficking here, how would you suggest that parents can start kind of opening up awareness and start having that conversation?
I still love to go in communities, churches, and educate individuals about trafficking and how we need to take our children back and save our children, protect our communities, and what we can do, how we can do that. And I think just the more people that know, the more people that get involved. Example, yourself, volunteering, the more we can attack this. What's the saying? We're better in numbers. So it's going to take a lot of us, but we need to get the word out. And I'm a firm believer in that prevention curriculum being in schools.
Dr. Street, you've been involved in this work for quite some time. Do you think we're getting any better at recognizing that human trafficking is a problem and putting plans into place to protect our children?
I think we are getting better at raising awareness, but there's still so much work to do, even just domestically, not even thinking internationally, just thinking domestically. There's still so much work to be done. And the hit that we took with the pandemic, the numbers have increased because of the pandemic. There was a lot of cyber grooming going on during that time. So, I believe we've made some headway, but we still have a long way to go.
Right. Going back to how children engage and how children talk, I think what I hear from a lot of parents is that there's a worry that a lot of the conversation that kids have is very explicit. And I'll also say, I don't think that this generation is the only one that's ever said that. I think if you go back to any generation, they feel that conversations tend to be very explicit. But there's clearly a line between, kind of just talk and then, being groomed by someone with bad intentions. How do you as a parent kind of watch those conversations, and how can you have a conversation with your kids about, kind of explicit language and explicit conversations that may be happening online?
Again, educating them about the dangers of that. And like I discussed before with healthy relationships, what does a healthy relationship look like? And when I have those conversations with kids, I don't say, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. This is what an unhealthy. No, what's their vision of a healthy relationship? What's their vision of an unhealthy relationship? And start there, because that's where they are. So you start there and start to build and find out, well, why do you think it's okay for someone to curse you out or put their hands on you? So it is a lot in those conversations, if they're different, and explaining, okay, what is appropriate environment for whatever it is. If it's, let's just say if it was cussing, what is an appropriate environment for that? That's not something that you just do all the time. And then as far as relationships and the grooming, again, children knowing about trafficking, knowing about grooming, it's hard to look for grooming if you don't know what it is. So again, the risk, it reduces the risk if they know what's happening out there. If they know how predators are looking for children and taking extremes and what they're doing and how the blackmail and the manipulation and the things that go along with that, they may not be able to catch it all, but we can arm them with a little bit at least. That might be the thing to save their life.
Do you see students often stepping in to protect other students from being groomed or being trafficked?
A majority of the time with the kids that I've worked with, them stepping in is going to an adult for help. It hasn't been exactly stepped in and try to protect them, because that can be very dangerous.
Right.
And what they have seen to make them concerned, they're probably scared to step in, and they should be. Because when we think about it, and I hate to phrase it this way, and forgive me, when children are being trafficked, they're viewed as a product, and that's their money. That's their money maker. And if somebody's going to mess with their money, they're going to get really angry. And they're very unpredictable. So, I never encourage students to jump in there and try to interfere with that. Talking to your friends, being supportive. Okay, if you're not going to take on that emotional stuff that goes with that. But definitely I encourage all students, if you know of someone who is being groomed, being trafficked, or a possibility, reach out to a qualified adult to get assistance. Tell someone.
And it sounds like, those qualified adults in the schools or at home, that's kind of the safe space that they can go.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. That's really great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're getting close to the end of our discussion tonight, but I like to close all of our conversations with a question like this. If you could ensure that everyone here tonight walks away remembering one thing, what is the one most important thing you would want them to remember?
For parents to educate themselves, not just parents. If someone's on here that's, a business owner or, just someone in the community, to educate themselves about trafficking, continue to attend webinars, have those conversations. Think about the things that we talked about as far as relationships, it's never too late. Go in there and start having those conversations. And remember, and pour as much as you can in prevention. So hopefully we don't have to do the work in intervention.
Wonderful advice. Dr. Street, thank you so much for being here tonight and for all the wonderful information you had to share. I know that I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a whole lot that they can take away with them. And I encourage our audience, again, thank you for being here. This event has been recorded. It's going to be available on the ATI YouTube channel. So as Dr. Street said, the more people who know about the risks and how to protect our children, the safer they are and the safer our communities can be. Our next Let's Talk webinar is going to be on December 16th, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern. The topic is on the buyers. How do we fight human trafficking by fighting demand? Valiant Ritchie, a global expert on human trafficking, will join us for a conversation about how communities, law enforcement, and political leaders can come together to stop the demand for human trafficking. The registration is now open on the ATI website, and I encourage you all to go and register now and spread the word. And to close us out, I'd like to turn it over to Candy Arthur from Anti-Trafficking International to say a few words about the organization. Candy?
For those of you who can't read lips, I'll turn on my mic. So yes, as Christine said, my name is Candy Arthur. I'm the Director of Engagement for ATI. And I want to thank Dr. Street as well for coming on. And I want to take a minute to just hit on some of the key notes. As Dr. Street was speaking, so many things spoke to me that correlate with ATI's mission. First and foremost being community. It's going to take everyone to stop this. It can't, not one person's not going to stop it. It's not going to happen in a day. And we need to get together as a community and get rid of these traffickers and protect our children and empower our children. And that is what ATI is all about. From starting with our Just Ask programs that are educational programs that are put into schools to teach prevention. We're hoping to not only touch on those to keep them from becoming grooming, but possibly even touch some of those groomers, because we're talking about respect and how you treat people and how you expect to be treated. So these lessons could teach potential groomers to think twice and go, no, that's not how you treat people. So it's not just focusing on one aspect, along with the education and prevention. Again, prevention, I understand it. It's not going to get those big lights going on and things like that. But successful campaigns start with prevention. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, wear your seatbelt. Only you can prevent forest fires. Prevention is the key to stopping this. And ATI wants your help in doing this. So please, go to your school faculties, insist upon getting educational programming in there to teach our children. Yes, it's an ugly, ugly subject. And at least with our education program, it is age appropriate and it builds off of each one. So every year there's something new that they've learned from last year. We're also about to release our homeschool edition of that as well. And we can customize into public schools, private schools, you name it, because it's important that our kids get this information and this training. Now, ATI doesn't just live in that prevention, because we recognize that it is going on. So that's why we do have other facets that we're working with, including a reporting line, to where if you see something, you can call and report it, or a tip line, and it's anonymous. And then we can see if it's actionable and make sure that the correct law enforcement gets that information. We also offer many trainings through our training academy. And these trainings are for law enforcement. These trainings are for hotel workers. These trainings are for retail professionals, people that are in the background and people take not a whole lot of notice of them, yet they see it firsthand. They can recognize those signs and then report it and stop it. So please, let's, as a community, our mothers, our parents, our children, our grandparents, our community leaders, our business, world, our corporate people who can donate, funds or even just technology, like ShotSpotter is partnered with us with technology. Anything it takes to get this eradicated, and it takes all of us. We can all bring something to the table to save our children. So please visit our website at www.preventht.org and find out how to make that happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Candy. And thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.